So imagine this. You finally made it through law school,
Oh, yeah.
only to face the bar exam, the final hurdle
It's a big one.
between you and that dream legal career.
It's daunting. Definitely daunting.
Absolutely. It's a beast of an exam, and that's what we're diving into today.
Really going to break it down
Yeah,
here.
we'll break it down in this deep dive, everything you need to know about the U.S. bar exam.
Yep.
We got some really great sources here. Washington and Lee University's Bar Exam Resources Guide,
That's a good one?
the National Conference of Bar Examiners website, even a U.S. Bar Exam Success Guide.
Very handy.
So let's jump right in. First things first,
Okay.
the U.S. Bar Exam, it's not like a one-size-fits-all test, right?
Right. There are some variations depending on which state you're in.
Yeah, exactly. But the core components, those are pretty consistent across the board.
Yeah, you've got the multi-state essay examination,
To MEE?
right? The multi-state performance test, the MPT,
Yeah.
and of course the multi-state PAR examination, or MBE.
That's the one everyone stresses about.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The MBE, I mean, it's 200 multiple choice questions.
It's a lot. That's why it's so important to understand what each of these components is really testing.
Right, so break that down for me. What skills are we talking about here?
So with the ME, it's all about your analytical writing skills. Can you really dig into those legal issues
Okay.
and articulate your arguments clearly and effectively in writing?
So you've got to be able to write.
You got to be able to write.
Okay, how about the MPT?
So the MPT, that's more about practical application.
Okay,
Can you take those legal principles and actually apply them in like a real-world scenario?
I see. So it's not just theoretical.
Not at all.
You've got to actually show you can use it.
Exactly.
And then, of
So-
course, the MBE, the big one.
Right. That's really about your breadth of legal knowledge across 7 core subjects.
Across 7.
7 core subjects, so that's a lot of information.
Oh, wow.
But one thing that's kind of interesting about the MBE is that the format and scoring is standardized.
Okay.
That's thanks to the National Conference of Bar Examiners.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that consistency, it's actually a really good thing, especially if you're thinking about, practicing in multiple states.
That's where the UBE comes in, right?
Exactly, the Uniform Bar Exam. So
Right.
if a state uses the UBE,
Yeah.
your score is transferable to other UBE states.
Which is huge if you're thinking of moving or maybe you want to practice across state lines.
Huge. It's a game changer for a lot of people.
So how is the UBE scored? What do people need to know?
So it's out of 400,
Okay.
and each component has a different weight. The MBE, that big one with all the multiple choice, that's 50%.
Wow. Got
The MEE is 30%.
Got it.
And then the MPT is 20%.
Okay, so let's say, just for example, someone knocks it out of the park on the MBE.
Okay,
They get a 170. That's 85 points right there.
right off the bat.
Wow.
So that MBE score, it really can make a big difference.
That makes a lot of sense, but
But, and this is important,
yeah.
even though the UBE itself is uniform, each state gets to set its own minimum passing score.
So you could pass in one state and not another.
Exactly. So definitely something to keep in mind as you're figuring out where you want to practice.
That's super important. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about actually studying for this beast.
Yeah, I mean, we've all been there.
Yeah, so many aspiring lawyers are probably freaking out right now,
Oh, I know.
trying to cram all this legal knowledge into their brains.
It's information overload.
It is. So how do we even approach studying for something like this? Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the things that the Washington and Lee Guide really emphasizes is active learning
Okay.
over passive reading.
So not just reading the textbook.
Right, not just highlighting and underlining.
Got it. You've got to do something with that information.
Exactly. Like, think about it. If you were learning to drive, you wouldn't just read the driver's manual.
No, you've got to get behind the wheel.
Right. You got to get behind the wheel and practice.
Exactly.
Same thing with the bar exam. You got to actually apply what you're learning.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we translate that active learning
Mm-hmm.
to, like, the MBE?
So there's a really great tip in the U.S. Bar Exam Success Guide.
Okay.
When you're practicing MBE questions, cover up the answer choices.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. Analyze the fact pattern, come to your own conclusion, then look at the options.
Oh, so you're not swayed by those tricky wrong answers.
Exactly. It keeps you from second-guessing yourself.
That's brilliant. So it's not just about recognizing the right answer.
Right.
It's about actually thinking through the problem.
It's about thinking like a lawyer.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just knowing the law.
No.
It's about applying it, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us to the MEE and the MPT.
Right, where you're really putting those skills to the test.
Okay, so for the MEE, what's the best way to approach those essays?
The Washington and Lee Guide recommends using the FIRAC method.
FIRAC. Okay, break that down for me.
So FIRAC, it stands for Facts, Issue, Rule, Analysis, and Conclusion.
Ooh, okay, got it.
It's a framework. It helps you break down the questions systematically.
So you're not just rambling.
Exactly. It makes sure you're hitting all the key points that the examiners are looking for.
So it's like a roadmap.
Exactly.
Okay. And can you use that same approach for the MPT?
Absolutely. Even though you're dealing with real-world scenarios, the underlying principles are the same.
Got it. So whether you're writing a memo, a brief, whatever it is,
Yep.
it's all about showing you can analyze the problem and communicate effectively.
Exactly.
This is all great advice. But let's be real. Studying for the bar exam, it's a marathon.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a sprint.
That's a long haul.
How do we keep up that momentum and not burn out?
That's a great question.
Because it's easy to get overwhelmed.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think the first step is acknowledging that stress is normal.
Oh, yeah.
Don't beat yourself up for feeling overwhelmed. It's a tough exam. Everyone goes through it.
So give me some practical tips. What can we do to manage that stress?
Well, the U.S. Bar Exam Success Guide recommends incorporating mindfulness techniques.
Mindfulness. Okay.
Yeah, things like deep breathing, even just a few minutes of meditation.
Okay.
Those can really help to calm your nerves and improve your focus.
I see.
And don't underestimate the power of sleep.
Sleep is so important,
It's crucial.
especially when you're studying.
Yeah, you're not going to retain anything if you're exhausted.
Exactly.
And remember, physical activity just as important as the mental stuff.
Right, so get out and move.
Exactly. Even a quick walk can do wonders.
It's about that balance.
It's about finding that balance.
Intense study, but also give yourself a break.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of pacing yourself,
Yeah.
one mistake that a lot of people make is
Yeah.
trying to cram everything in at the last minute.
Oh, cramming. That's the worst.
It never works.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is. So instead of cramming, what should we be doing?
Focus on creating a realistic study schedule and then stick to it.
So consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
Okay, so we've talked about the different parts of the exam, some study strategies, stress management,
Right.
but there's another really important element that we haven't touched on yet,
What's that?
mindset.
Oh, absolutely. Your mindset plays a huge role.
So how do you cultivate that confidence when you're facing such a daunting challenge?
One powerful technique is visualization.
Visualization, okay.
Yeah, take some time each day to just close your eyes.
Okay.
And picture yourself confidently taking the exam, answering the questions, and succeeding.
Like create a mental movie.
Exactly, a mental movie of yourself crushing it.
And that can really help.
It can help to replace those negative thoughts with positive ones.
So instead of saying, I'm going to fail,
Right.
you're saying, I'm going to pass.
Exactly. You're replacing those self-doubting thoughts with affirmations.
So it's like self-talk.
It's all about that positive self-talk.
And I imagine having a support system helps too.
Oh, huge. Surround yourself with people who believe in you.
People who can offer encouragement.
Yeah, people you can talk to when you're feeling stressed.
Because sometimes just talking it out
Right.
can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And one thing that really stood out to me in the U.S. Bar Exam Success Guide was celebrating small wins.
Ooh, I like that.
Don't wait until you pass the exam to feel good about yourself. Acknowledge those little victories along the way.
So if you master a tricky legal concept
Yes.
or you ace a practice test,
Celebrate it.
take a moment to celebrate.
Exactly. Those small wins, they add up. They keep you motivated.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered the format of the exam, scoring, study strategies, even mindset.
A lot of ground.
We have. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about what happens after the exam.
Okay. Yeah, because that waiting period can be brutal.
Oh, it's agonizing.
It really is.
So how do you even find out when those scores are going to be released?
The most reliable source is either the NCBE website or your state bar examiner's website.
Okay, go right to the source.
Exactly. Don't rely on rumors or message boards.
So once you've survived the exam and the waiting game is over, then what? Smooth sailing to becoming a lawyer.
Well, not quite. Passing the bar exam, it's just one step in the licensing process.
Okay, so what else do you have to do?
Typically, you'll need to apply for a license in your state, go through a character and fitness evaluation, and then there's the attorney's oath.
So it's like the final checks and balances,
Exactly.
making sure you're not only knowledgeable, but also ethical and fit to practice.
Right, and some states even have additional requirements like a diversity in lawyering course.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's all about making sure newly licensed attorneys are well-rounded.
Okay, so there are still some hoops to jump through.
A few more hoops.
But hey, you've come this far.
You're almost there.
Exactly. Now, before we move on to the nitty-gritty of tackling each exam component,
Okay.
I want to talk about something that's been on my mind.
I'm listening.
How well does the bar exam really reflect the realities of practicing law?
Ooh, That's a big one.
It is, I mean, we've spent all this time talking about how to pass this exam,
Right.
but does acing it really mean you're ready to step into a courtroom?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is, and it's one that we'll be exploring further in part 2 of this deep dive.
Stay tuned. Welcome back. So when we left off, we were really starting to get into this debate
We were.
about how well the bar exam really prepares you for what it's actually like to be a lawyer.
Right. Does it actually translate to real-world practice?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And honestly, there's no easy answer.
It's been debated for years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, some legal experts argue that the bar exam, with its focus on memorization and standardized testing,
Yeah.
it just doesn't capture the full picture.
Right. It's not the whole story.
No, it misses those crucial real-world skills, like client communication,
Right.
negotiation, even just managing the emotional roller coaster of legal cases.
Right. It's one thing to know the law. It's another to actually practice it.
Exactly. It's like you could study a cookbook and know all the recipes,
Oh, I like that.
but that doesn't mean you can run a restaurant.
No, not at all.
Right. There's a lot more to it.
Absolutely. You got to handle the heat of the kitchen.
Exactly.
So are law schools doing anything to address this gap?
Yeah, actually, some schools are trying to incorporate more practical skills training into their curriculums.
Okay, like what kind of training?
So things like mock trials, client counseling simulations, even workshops on legal tech.
Wow, so they're trying to give students a taste of what it's really like.
Exactly, preparing them for those real-world challenges.
That makes sense, but even with those efforts,
Yeah.
there's still this disconnect between the bar exam itself and the actual practice of law.
There is, and it raises the question, should the bar exam be completely overhauled?
That's a big question. I mean, what would that even look like?
Well, some scholars propose incorporating more practical skills assessments.
Okay, interesting.
Like imagine scenarios where you have to interview a client,
Okay.
draft a legal document, maybe even negotiate a settlement.
So you're actually demonstrating those skills, not just answering hypothetical questions.
Yeah, exactly, showing you can apply what you know in a realistic setting.
I mean, that would be amazing, but logistically,
Yeah.
how do you even implement something like that on such a large scale?
Right, that's the challenge.
Standardizing those assessments, ensuring they're fair.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is, but it's definitely a conversation worth having.
Absolutely, especially as the legal profession continues to evolve.
Speaking of evolution, what about incorporating emerging legal fields into the bar exam?
Oh, yeah, that's another key area.
Things like cybersecurity law, AI law, even space law.
Right. I mean, those fields are exploding right now.
They are, and we need lawyers who are equipped to handle those challenges.
Exactly. The bar exam needs to keep pace with these changes.
It's all about making sure it remains relevant.
Absolutely. A true reflection of what it takes to succeed as a lawyer in the 21st century.
Okay, so big picture stuff aside,
Right.
let's get back to some practical advice for those facing the exam.
Okay, sounds good.
We talked about the MEE, MPT, and MBE.
Mm.
Each one requires a slightly different approach, right?
Right. And a lot of people get really bogged down in that MBE.
Oh, yeah, with all those multiple choice questions.
It can be overwhelming.
It can. So let's revisit that strategy we talked about earlier.
You mean covering up the answer choices?
Yes, forming your own conclusion before looking at the options.
That's such a valuable technique for the MBE.
It is. It forces you to think critically, not just try to recognize the answer.
Exactly. You're training your brain to avoid those mental traps.
Right. The examiners love to throw in those tricky distractor answers.
Oh, they do?
So you got to be prepared.
Be prepared. And another tip for the MBE is to break it down into manageable chunks.
Okay, so focus on one subject at a time.
Exactly. Master those concepts before moving on to the next.
So you're not trying to juggle everything at once.
Right. Create a strategic study plan that works for you.
That makes sense. Now, how about the MEE? What trips people up there?
Well, one of the biggest challenges with the MEE is the time pressure.
Oh, yeah. You've got to read those fact patterns, analyze the issues, and write a well-organized essay.
All in a limited amount of time.
It's like a mental sprint,
It is, and that's where outlining comes in.
outlining your essays.
Yes, the Washington Lee Guide really emphasizes the importance of outlining before you start writing.
But doesn't that take up valuable time?
It might seem that way, but trust me, those few minutes spent outlining will save you so much time and stress in the long run.
So it's about creating a roadmap for your essay.
Exactly. It helps you organize your thoughts, make sure you're hitting all the key points, and avoid rambling or going off on tangents.
Okay, so the examiners aren't looking for a work of art.
No, they want to see clear, concise legal analysis.
Got it. Showing you understand the law and can apply it to the facts.
Exactly.
And that same principle applies to the MPT, right?
Absolutely, even though you're dealing with real-world tasks.
Like drafting a memo, a brief, or a client letter.
Right. It's all about showcasing your ability to analyze legal problems and communicate your conclusions effectively.
Okay, so what's the best way to prepare for the MPT?
Practice, practice, practice.
Makes sense.
Don't just read sample answers. Actually sit down and work through those tasks under timed conditions.
So you're getting used to that pressure.
Exactly. You're familiarizing yourself with the format, the time constraints, the types of tasks you'll be expected to perform.
That's a great tip. And one thing that stood out to me in the U.S. Bar Exam Success Guide
Oh, yeah.
was the emphasis on not just practicing the tasks themselves,
Okay.
but also practicing the process of reading
Right.
and analyzing the task instructions
Oh, that's so
and
important.
the supporting documents.
Because sometimes those instructions can be tricky.
They can, and if you miss a key detail.
It could throw off your whole response.
Exactly, so pay attention to those subtle cues, tailor your response accordingly.
Those little things can make a big difference in your score.
They can. Okay, so we've covered strategies for tackling each component,
We've-
but studying for this exam, it's a grind.
Oh, it is.
It's months of intense preparation. How do you stay motivated?
That's a great question. And you know, one of the most effective ways to stay motivated is to focus on your why.
Your why. Okay, what do you mean by that?
Why are you doing this? Why do you want to be a lawyer?
Right, what's the driving force?
Exactly. Is it a passion for justice, a desire to help others, a fascination with the law itself?
Tap into that deeper motivation,
Yes, let it fuel you through those long study sessions.
because it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture.
It is. And don't forget about your support system.
People who believe in you.
Yes, surround yourself with people who encourage you, who you can talk to when you're feeling overwhelmed.
Sometimes just venting to a friend or family member
Right.
can make all the difference.
It can. And you know, another thing that can help is celebrating those small wins.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
Don't wait until you pass the exam to acknowledge your progress.
Celebrate those little victories along the way.
Exactly. Those small wins, they add up, they create a sense of momentum, they remind you that you're capable of achieving your goals.
They keep you going. Okay, this has been so insightful.
Glad to hear it.
We've covered so much ground, but before we move on to the final part of this deep dive,
Okay.
I have one more question.
Shoot.
What advice would you give to someone who's about to take the exam?
Ooh, in those final days and hours.
Yes, what mindset should they cultivate?
I think the most important thing is to trust the work you've put in.
Okay.
You've dedicated so much time and effort to preparing for this moment.
Months, maybe even years of studying.
Exactly. You've studied the law, you've practiced the skills, you've honed your strategies.
So now it's time to believe in yourself.
Yes, let go of those doubts and anxieties and trust that you're ready.
Easier said than done, but I get it.
It is, and you know, one thing that can help calm those pre-exam jitters is to create a ritual for yourself.
A ritual. Okay, what do you mean?
It could be something as simple as reviewing your notes one last time, maybe going for a walk to clear your head,
I like that.
listening to your favorite music, spending time with loved ones who support you.
So it's about finding those things that help you relax and center yourself.
Exactly. Approach the exam with a sense of calm and focus.
And remember, the bar exam is just one step.
Right.
It's a big step.
It is.
But it doesn't define your worth as a future lawyer.
Absolutely. There's life beyond the bar exam.
Your passion for the law, your commitment to justice, that's what matters.
Well said. And with that, I think we're ready to move on to the final chapter of this bar exam saga.
The grand finale.
What happens after you take the exam, from waiting for those scores to navigating the licensing process?
Can't wait. Stay tuned. Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive
Part 3.
into the U.S. bar exam.
The final chapter.
So you've climbed that mountain of prep, you faced the beast of the exam itself.
You made it, and now
Now you wait.
you're in that, limbo,
Waiting game.
waiting for those scores.
Oh, the anticipation is killer. It really is. But before we get to those score releases and licensing,
Okay.
I want to circle back to something we talked about before.
Yeah.
The future of the bar exam.
Ah, yes, looking ahead.
We talked about practical skills assessments, emerging legal fields, maybe even different testing formats.
Right, because the legal landscape, it's always changing.
Always changing, so the exam has to adapt.
It does. And one idea that's getting some attention is a tiered bar exam.
Okay, tiered, so like different levels.
Yeah, different levels depending on what you want to practice.
So instead of one giant exam,
Right.
you might have a specialized one for corporate law, Another for criminal law.
Exactly. Testing the specific knowledge and skills for that area.
So it's more tailored, more specific.
More relevant to what you'll actually be doing.
Makes a lot of sense. What else is out there?
Well, there's also this idea of a portfolio-based assessment.
Portfolio-based, so like showcasing your work.
Yeah, like real-world legal projects you've done.
Not just hypothetical questions.
No, you're showing you can actually apply the law.
I mean, that would be amazing.
It would it?
Moving beyond just memorization, really demonstrating those skills.
Exactly, because being a lawyer, it's more than just knowing the rules.
It's about problem solving, critical thinking.
It is, and who knows, maybe some of our listeners will be the ones to make these changes happen.
Yeah, leading the way, shaping the future of the legal profession.
That's what we need, people who are passionate about making a difference.
People who are ready to challenge the status quo.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's bring it back to the present.
Back to reality.
You took the exam,
Yeah.
you waited, and now
The moment of truth.
the scores are here.
Deep breath.
Deep breaths, what's next?
Well, first, you got to acknowledge what you've done.
Right, regardless of the outcome.
You put in the work. You dedicated yourself to this goal.
It's a huge accomplishment.
It is, and you learned a ton along the way.
So celebrate that journey even before you see the results.
Exactly, and once you've had a moment to process those scores,
Right.
then it's on to the licensing process.
Right, passing the exam, it's just one piece of the puzzle.
One step in the journey.
So what does that licensing process look like?
Well, it varies by state,
Okay.
but generally you'll need to apply for a license,
Yeah.
go through a character and fitness evaluation,
Got it.
and then take the attorney's oath.
So it's not just about your knowledge.
No.
It's about your character, your ethics.
Exactly, making sure you're fit to practice law.
And some states have additional requirements, right?
They do, like continuing education courses.
Okay, so the learning never stops.
It doesn't, and that's important.
It is. You're always growing, always evolving as a lawyer.
Exactly, because this profession, it's a commitment.
A commitment to learning, to service, to upholding those high standards.
Absolutely, and as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm struck by how much preparing for the bar exam is like actually practicing law.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, both require resilience, dedication, a willingness to tackle those tough challenges.
You got to be able to think critically, analyze complex issues.
Exactly, and communicate your ideas clearly and persuasively.
Those are essential skills for any lawyer.
They are, and sometimes in the midst of all the stress,
Yeah.
we forget about the excitement of this journey.
The excitement of becoming a lawyer.
Right, of making a difference, of pursuing your passion.
Whether it's fighting for justice or just a fascination with the law itself.
It's an incredible field to be a part of.
It is. So to everyone out there on this path,
Wherever you are in your journey,
remember this.
the challenges are real.
But so are the rewards.
This profession, it's demanding, but it's also incredibly fulfilling.
You have the power to make a real impact.
To shape the world around you.
To champion justice.
And so, as we close out this deep dive into the U.S. bar exam,
Yeah.
we hope you found it insightful, empowering, and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
You got this.
Believe in yourself, stay curious, keep learning.
Embrace the adventure.
The legal world awaits.
And that's a wrap on his deep dive into the U.S. bar exam.